How many ships did we lose? Jake asked Amy Wells, who had transferred to the Resilience to coordinate communications. 87% of our fleet, Amy replied quietly. But Jake, we destroyed or disabled 38 alien vessels. We won. Tom Bradley, his arm in a sling from the battle, joined them. Captain, the aliens are requesting a meeting. With who? President Stone herself. They want to talk. Jake felt surprise wash over him. They want to surrender? Something like that, Tom said with a grin. On Earth, President Karen Stone sat in the Situation Room with her advisors. The victory had come at a terrible cost, but it was still a victory. More importantly, it had changed everything. Admiral Wright, what's our current status? President Stone asked. Admiral Susan Wright looked tired but proud. We have 15 ships still operational plus orbital defenses. Not much, but enough to defend Earth if they attack again. Will they attack again? President Stone asked. Dr. Sam Johnson shook his head. I don't think so, Madam President. Their communications show they're completely confused. They can't understand how we beat them. General Pete Collins leaned forward. What exactly are they asking for? A formal meeting, Amy Wells reported from her communication station. Ambassador Krillnox wants to discuss new terms. Terms of surrender? Colonel Mary Davis asked hopefully. No, Amy said. Terms of alliance. The meeting took place aboard the damaged but still functional space station Harmony Point. President Stone arrived with a small delegation, including Captain Jake Morrison, Admiral Wright, and Dr. Johnson. The aliens came with only 3 ships, all showing battle damage. Ambassador Krillnox looked older and wiser than he had during first contact. His silver eyes held a new respect. President Stone, Krillnox said as they sat at the same table where this had all begun months ago. We have made a grave error. Which error was that? President Stone asked calmly. We judged your species by your technology instead of your capabilities, Krillnox admitted. We saw your weapons as antique and assumed your minds were also old. High Commander Vextal, bandaged but alive, spoke from his chair. Your people fought unlike anything we have ever encountered. You turned your entire solar system into a weapon. You used physics itself against us. We fought to survive, President Stone said simply. Yes, Vextal agreed. And that is what we failed to understand. Every other species we have encountered surrendered when faced with superior technology. You fought harder. Dr. Sam Johnson leaned forward. Commander, why did other species give up so easily? Vextal considered the question. They calculated their chances and decided resistance was futile. They chose to live as servants rather than die as warriors. Humans don't think like that, Jake Morrison said. We'd rather die free than live as slaves. We know that now, Krillnox said quietly. The question is, what happens next? President Stone looked around the table. What are you proposing? An alliance between equals, Krillnox said. Your people have shown abilities we lack. Your tactical thinking, your adaptability, your refusal to accept defeat. These are valuable assets. What would we get from this alliance? Admiral Wright asked suspiciously. Technology, knowledge, access to the galaxy, Vextal replied. But more than that, respect. No species in the Zephyrian Empire will ever again underestimate humanity. President Stone was quiet for a long moment. You came here to conquer us. You threatened to enslave our people. Why should we trust you now? Because we learned something important, Krillnock said. Power is not just about having the best weapons. It's about knowing how to use whatever weapons you have. Tom Bradley, who had been listening quietly, spoke up. Ambassador, can I ask you something? Of course. What did you think when we started throwing rocks at your ships? Krillnox made that sound that might have been laughter. We thought you had gone insane. Rocks against energy shields? But then we realized the rocks were moving faster than our sensors could track. And the cargo ships that turned out to be warships? Brilliant, Vextal admitted. We were looking for military vessels and ignored what appeared to be civilian craft. By the time we realized our mistake, you were among us. The fake surrender signals were particularly effective, Krillnox added. We expected you to give up after losing so many ships. When you didn't, we knew we were facing something completely new. Dr. Sam Johnson smiled. Commander, humans have been fighting wars for thousands of years. We've learned that victory goes to the creative, not necessarily the powerful. Yes, Vextal said. We see that now. Our empire controls hundreds of worlds, but we've grown soft. We rely on technology instead of thinking. What about your other enemies? President Stone asked. Won't they see this alliance as weakness? Let them, Krillnox said with something like pride. They will make the same mistake we did. They will underestimate humans. Amy Wells had been monitoring alien communications throughout the meeting. President Stone, I'm picking up transmissions from other parts of their empire. Word of our victory is spreading. What kind of reaction? Admiral Wright asked. Shock, mostly, Amy replied. No one can believe that a primitive species defeated a Zephyrian fleet. Good, Jake Morrison said grimly. Let them wonder. President Stone made her decision. We'll consider your alliance proposal, but with conditions. Name them, Krillnox said immediately. First, Earth remains independent. We govern ourselves. Agreed. Second, we want access to your technology, but we keep our weapons and tactics secret. Vextal and Krillnox exchanged glances. That seems wise, Vextal said. Your military methods should remain uniquely human. Third, any species that wants to join our alliance does so voluntarily. No more conquests. That will be different for us, Krillnox admitted. But perhaps it is time for a different approach. The negotiations continued for hours, but the basic agreement was clear. Humanity would join the galactic community not as servants, but as partners. More than that, they would serve as a reminder that technological superiority meant nothing without the wisdom to use it properly. As the meeting ended, Vextal approached Captain Jake Morrison privately. Captain, I must ask, when you rammed your ship into my cruiser, did you know you would survive? Jake thought about it. No, Commander. I expected to die. Yet you did it anyway. My crew needed time to escape. The mission required it. Vextal stared at him with something like awe. No Zephyrian commander would make such a sacrifice. We value our own lives too highly. Maybe that's why you lost, Jake said quietly. Later, as the alien ships prepared to leave the solar system, Amy Wells monitored their communications one final time. What are they saying? President Stone asked. They're sending a message to their home world, Amy replied. They're recommending that humanity be classified as a strategic alliance partner instead of a client species. What does that mean? Dr. Sam Johnson smiled. It means they're going to tell everyone in the galaxy not to mess with us." Tom Bradley looked out at the departing alien ships. "Think they'll keep their word?" "They'll keep it," Jake Morrison said with certainty. "They learned something important about humans. We don't just fight to win battles. We fight to win wars." President Stone made a final broadcast to Earth and all human colonies. "My fellow humans, today we have achieved something remarkable. We have earned our place among the stars not through conquest, but through courage. The aliens came here thinking our weapons were antiques. They left knowing that the greatest weapon is not technology, but the will to use whatever you have in defense of freedom." She paused, looking up at the stars that no longer seemed so distant. "Today, humanity takes its first step into a larger galaxy. We go not as conquerors or as servants, but as equals. We go as humans." Months later, Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of a new ship, the Indomitable. It was built with human engineering and alien technology, the best of both worlds. "Captain," Amy Wells reported from her station, "we're receiving a message from the Zephyrian Council. They're asking for human military advisors." "Military advisors?" "They want us to teach them our tactics," Tom Bradley said with amusement. "Apparently some of their other enemies heard about our victory and are getting ideas." Jake smiled as he looked out at the stars. Humanity had proven that advanced weapons meant nothing without advanced thinking. Now the galaxy knew it too. "Set course for Zephyria," Jake ordered. "It's time to show them what humans really do best." "What's that, Captain?" Lisa Park asked from her tactical station. "We survive," Jake said simply. "And we help others survive too." As the Indomitable jumped to faster-than-light speed, heading toward adventures among the stars, one thing was certain. No alien species would ever again mistake humanity's antique weapons for weakness. They had learned that humans don't just build weapons, they become weapons when necessary. And that was a lesson the galaxy would never forget. "Granted," Vextal said, "but keep our shields up. I don't trust these humans." That distrust saved his life. When the human ships reached optimal range, they suddenly changed. What had looked like beaten cargo vessels revealed their true nature. Hidden weapon bays opened. Fake hull plating fell away to show missile launchers. Emergency thrusters fired, accelerating the human ships to ramming speed. "Trap!" Vextal shouted. "All ships! Battle stations!" But it was too late for coordinated defense. The human ships were among them, fighting at point-blank range, where the aliens' superior speed meant nothing. Captain Jake Morrison's ship rammed directly into a Zephyrian cruiser. Just before impact, Tom Bradley detonated their modified fusion reactor. The explosion tore through both ships, but the alien vessel was completely destroyed while human escape pods scattered in all directions. "Tom!" Jake called over the comm as they evacuated. "Still here, Captain," Tom replied from his pod. "Did you see that boom?" Other human ships used similar tactics. They sacrificed themselves to damage or destroy alien vessels. It was the kind of warfare that horrified the Zephyrians, enemies who would destroy themselves just to hurt you. But the real surprise was still coming. Lisa Park activated the orbital bombardment from her command post. But these weren't normal missiles. They were projectiles that had been building speed for days, using the gravity of planets and moons to accelerate. "Firing solution confirmed," Lisa reported. "Time to impact, 30 seconds. The missiles came from everywhere at once. Some had been launched from Earth and slung around Mars. Others came from the asteroid belt, accelerated by Jupiter's massive gravity. A few came from the outer planets, traveling at speeds that seemed impossible. The aliens tried to shoot them, Down. But the missiles were moving too fast and coming from too many directions. Most importantly, they were coming from directions the aliens hadn't expected. "How are they doing this?" Vextal demanded as his fleet came under bombardment from all sides. "Sir, they're using orbital mechanics as a weapon," his science officer reported with amazement. "They've turned the entire solar system into a giant slingshot." The battle became chaos. Human ships exploded themselves to damage alien vessels. Missiles struck from impossible angles. Even pieces of destroyed human ships had been rigged to explode when they hit alien hulls. Amy Wells coordinated the madness from Earth. "All remaining units pattern Omega. Use everything you have." Everything meant exactly that. Human ships used their life support systems as weapons, venting atmosphere to blind alien sensors. They used their communication arrays to jam alien signals. They even used their gravity generators to create distortions that confused alien targeting systems. Dr. Sam Johnson watched the battle unfold and made notes. "Fascinating," he said to Admiral Wright. "The aliens still don't understand. They think there are rules to war." "What rules?" Admiral Wright asked. "Exactly," Dr. Sam Johnson replied. The turning point came when Colonel Mary Davis executed the final phase of Operation Boomerang. She had been saving the best surprise for last. "Asteroid impact in 10 seconds, she announced calmly. High Commander Vextal looked at his screens in horror. A massive asteroid was approaching his flagship at tremendous speed. It hadn't been there a moment ago. "Where did that come from?" he demanded. "Sir, it appears to have been launched from the belt," his navigator reported. "But that's impossible. Nothing that size could be accelerated to such speed. Unless you use multiple mass drivers working together," Colonel Davis said quietly from her command post, watching the alien flagship grow larger on her targeting display. The asteroid struck Vextal's ship like the fist of an angry god. The Zephyrian shields, already weakened by continuous combat, collapsed completely. The flagship's hull cracked and split. Atmosphere vented into space. "All hands abandon ship," Vextal ordered as his bridge erupted in sparks and smoke. Around him, the surviving alien vessels were retreating. They had started the battle with 27 ships. Now only 12 were still functional, and most of those were damaged. Captain Jake Morrison, floating in his escape pod, watched the alien fleet withdraw toward the outer solar system. His crew was scattered among dozens of pods, but they were alive. "Amy, are you getting this?" he asked over his emergency communicator. "I'm getting it, Captain," Amy Wells replied from Earth. "The aliens are in full retreat. We actually did it." "Did what?" "We won," Amy said with wonder in her voice. "We beat an advanced alien fleet with antique weapons and crazy tactics." Tom Bradley's voice joined the conversation. "Captain, my pod's sensors are showing something interesting." "What's that, Tom?" "The alien flagship is drifting, dead in space. I think we got their commander." Jake felt a grim satisfaction. The aliens had come to conquer Earth, thinking humans were primitive and harmless. Now they were running with their tails between their legs, but even as he celebrated the victory, Jake knew this wasn't over. The aliens would be back, and next. Time they would be prepared for human tactics. "All crews, this is Admiral Wright," came a transmission from New Gettysburg. "Outstanding work, everyone, but stay alert. We hurt them badly, but they're not finished yet." Jake looked toward the outer solar system, where the alien ships were regrouping once again. "No," he agreed, "but neither are we. In space around them, the wreckage of human and alien ships drifted silently. The battle had been costly for both sides, but the humans had proven something important. They had shown that advanced technology meant nothing without the will to use it creatively. They had shown that any weapon could be deadly in the right hands. Most importantly, they had shown that humanity would never surrender its freedom, no matter the cost. High Commander Vextal floated in the wreckage of his flagship, barely alive inside his emergency suit. Around him, pieces of his once mighty vessel drifted in the cold darkness of space. His proud fleet was scattered and broken. "Commander," came a weak voice over his emergency communicator. It was his tactical officer, somewhere among the debris. "Rescue ships are coming." Vextal looked back toward Earth, that small blue world that had seemed so helpless just days ago. Now it blazed with the light of victory, its orbital defenses still active and ready. How did this happen? He whispered to himself. The answer came from an unexpected source. Ambassador Krill Knox's ship had survived the battle, though badly damaged. The ambassador's voice crackled over the communication system. "Commander, we underestimated them completely. These humans don't fight like any species we've encountered. They're primitive," Vextal said weakly, still trying to understand his defeat. "No," Krill Knox replied. "They're different. Their weapons are old, but their minds are not. They think like weapons themselves." As rescue ships pulled survivors from the wreckage, the truth of human warfare became clear. The aliens had superior technology, but humans had superior adaptability. Where other species built better guns, humans had learned better ways to use any gun. Captain Jake Morrison was rescued by the human ship Resilience, commanded by his old friend Captain Pete Nash. As Jake recovered in the medical bay, he reflected on what they had accomplished. Captain Jake Morrison's ship took a direct hit from a plasma cannon, the bridge filled with smoke and sparks. "Hull breach on decks 4 and 5, Lisa Park reported, blood running down her face from a cut on her forehead. "Can we still fight?" Jake asked. Tom Bradley's voice came over the comm from engineering. "Captain, I can give you one more shot, but it'll use our last power cell." Jake looked around at his crew. They were beaten and bloodied, but their eyes still held that human fire that the aliens couldn't understand. "Do it," Jake ordered. The Liberty fired its last missile at point-blank range into a Zephyrian destroyer. The explosion took out both ships, but Jake's crew escaped in life pods. As they floated in space, watching the battle continue around them, Amy Wells spoke quietly. "Captain, look at that." She pointed toward the alien flagship. It was turning away from Earth, its engines glowing brighter. "They're retreating," Lisa Park said with amazement. Jake smiled despite his injuries. "No, they're not retreating. They're learning." High Commander Vextal stood among the wreckage of his bridge, watching his fleet fall apart around him. Half his ships were destroyed or disabled. The humans had turned the entire solar system into a weapon. "Sir, we must withdraw," his second-in-command urged. "We're losing ships faster than we can count." Vextal looked at Earth on his screen. The small blue planet no longer looked helpless. It looked dangerous. "Signal the fleet," he ordered reluctantly. "Fall back to Jupiter orbit. We need to reassess these humans." As the surviving Zephyrian ships retreated, cheers echoed across human communication networks. They had done the impossible. They had forced an advanced alien fleet to retreat using weapons the aliens considered antiques. But Jake Morrison, floating in his life pod, knew the battle wasn't over. "They'll be back," he told his crew. "And next time they won't underestimate us." Amy Wells checked her communications equipment. "Captain, I'm getting reports from all over the system. We hurt them badly, but we hurt ourselves too." "How bad?" Jake asked. We lost maybe 60% of our ships and platforms, Amy reported. But, sir, we took out nearly half their fleet. Jake nodded grimly. Then we'd better get ready for round 2. Because I doubt they're going to give up and go home. In the distance, the Zephyrian fleet regrouped near Jupiter. They had learned a hard lesson about human warfare. The question now was what they would do with that knowledge. Admiral Susan Wright stood in the command center of the space station New Gettysburg, studying the tactical displays. 3 days had passed since the E-Day first battle, and the aliens were still near Jupiter, licking their wounds. Status report, she ordered. Colonel Mary Davis stepped forward with a tablet full of data. We've lost 63% of our ships and 40% of our orbital platforms, but we've inflicted heavy damage on the alien fleet. Heavy enough? Admiral Wright asked. Not yet, Colonel Davis admitted. They still have 27 ships operational. We have maybe 15 vessels that can still fight. Dr. Sam Johnson looked up from his analysis station. But they're confused, Admiral. Their communications show they're arguing among themselves. They can't understand how we hurt them so badly. Admiral Wright nodded. Good. Confusion is a weapon too. What's our next move? Operation Boomerang, Colonel Davis said with a grim smile. The plan was dangerous and complex. Instead of waiting for the aliens to attack again, the humans would take the fight to them. But they wouldn't do it the way the aliens expected. Captain Jake Morrison had been rescued from his life pod and given command of a new ship, the Defiance. It was another converted cargo vessel, but Tom Bradley had worked his magic on it. What's different about this one? Jake asked as he toured the ship. Tom grinned, his face still marked by cuts from the last battle. This one's designed to break. The laws of physics, Captain. Explain that. Tom led him to the engine room. See this? It's not really a fusion reactor. It's a fusion bomb with a throttle. We can run it stable for normal flight, or we can let it go boom. Jake stared at the device. You turned our engine into a weapon? Everything's a weapon if you use it right, Tom said. That's what the aliens don't understand about humans. Across the solar system, other preparations were underway. Lisa Park was working with the surviving orbital platforms, but she wasn't preparing defenses. She was preparing something much more aggressive. Are you sure this will work? Her assistant Rick Stone asked nervously. Lisa checked her calculations one more time. The math is solid. We can use the gravity wells of the planets to create slingshot effects. Our missiles will build up incredible speed. But the timing has to be perfect. Then we better not mess up, Lisa said simply. Amy Wells was coordinating. From Earth, managing a communication network that spanned the entire solar system. But she was also doing something else. She was lying to the aliens. Broadcasting fake surrender signals now, she reported to Admiral Wright. Will they believe it? Maybe, Amy said. Their communications show they expect us to give up after the first battle. They think all species surrender when they lose ships. Dr. Sam Johnson had studied alien psychology and tactics extensively. They don't understand humans at all, he told the command staff. Every other species they conquered gave up after losing the first major battle. They think we're insane for continuing to fight. Maybe we are, Admiral Wright said with a slight smile. The aliens were indeed confused. High Commander Vextel paced his damaged bridge, trying to understand what had happened. Tactical analysis, he demanded from his officers. Sir, the humans used weapons and tactics we've never seen before, his tactical officer reported. They turned their entire solar system into a weapon. Asteroids, cargo ships, even space debris. But their technology is primitive, Vextal insisted. Yes, sir. but they use it in ways we never expected. They don't follow standard military doctrine. Ambassador Krill Knox joined the conversation via communication link. Commander, we're receiving surrender signals from the human government. Vextal felt relief wash over him. Finally, they've come to their senses. Should we accept their surrender? Of course, Vextal said, but we approach carefully. These humans are more dangerous than we thought. What the aliens didn't know was that the surrender signals were fake. Amy Wells was broadcasting them while Admiral Wright prepared the real human response. Operation Boomerang is go, Admiral Wright ordered. Captain Jake Morrison received the signal aboard the Defiance. Around him, the surviving human fleet began, moving toward Jupiter. They looked beaten and desperate, exactly what the aliens expected to see. Tom, are we ready for the special maneuver? Jake asked. Ready, Captain, Tom replied. Just remember, once we start this, there's no going back. The human ships approached the alien fleet slowly, broadcasting surrender messages. The Zephyrians waited in formation, their weapons powered down as a gesture of victory. Sir, the human ships are requesting permission to dock for surrender ceremonies, Krill Knox reported to Vextal. High Commander Vextal stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching Earth grow larger on his screens. The small blue planet looked peaceful and helpless. This would be the easiest conquest in Zephyrian history. All ships advance to attack formation, Vextal ordered. His voice was calm and confident. Maintain standard spacing. Watch for human surrender signals. Around him, 50 Zephyrian warships moved through space like deadly dancers. Their hulls gleamed silver in the sunlight. Blue energy crackled along their weapon arrays. Commander, his tactical officer reported, we are detecting no human military vessels in our path. Of course not, Vextal said with amusement. They know they cannot fight us. They are probably preparing their surrender. The Zephyrian fleet passed through the asteroid belt at high speed. The commander barely noticed the mining equipment scattered among the rocks. Humans were always digging for metals and minerals. Such a primitive way to gather resources. Sir, the sensor operator called out, I'm reading some unusual activity in the asteroid field. Define unusual, Vextal said, not really interested. Energy spikes from several mining platforms. They appear to be launching something. Vextal was about to dismiss this as unimportant when the first kinetic projectile struck his lead destroyer. The ship's energy shields, designed to deflect plasma and laser fire, offered little protection against a chunk of solid rock traveling at tremendous speed. The destroyer's hull cracked like an egg. Atmosphere vented into space in white clouds. What was that? Vextal demanded. Before anyone could answer, more projectiles filled the space around them. Engineer Frank Miller's mass drivers were firing continuously, turning ordinary asteroids into deadly weapons. Evasive maneuvers, Vextal ordered, but it was too late for some ships. 3 more destroyers took hits. One exploded completely when a rock punched through its reactor. How are they doing this? The tactical officer asked, in shock. Kinetic weapons, Vextal realized. They're using electromagnetic launchers to accelerate solid matter. The Zephyrian shields flickered and strained under the bombardment. They had been designed to handle energy weapons, not chunks of metal and rock flying at extreme speeds. Sir, we need to get out of this field, the navigation officer reported. Agreed. All ships. Maximum speed toward Earth. We'll deal with these mining platforms later. But as the fleet cleared the asteroid belt, they ran into the second part of Captain Jake Morrison's plan. Contact! Bearing 27 Mark IV, the sensor operator called out. Multiple human vessels approaching. Vextal looked at his screen and almost laughed. The human ships looked like floating scrap metal. They were old cargo vessels, slow and clumsy. Those are cargo ships, he said with contempt. Destroy them. The Zephyrian fleet opened fire with plasma cannons. Bright beams of energy lanced across space toward the human vessels. But something was wrong. The human ships weren't trying to dodge. Captain Jake Morrison watched the alien fire approach. His cargo ship, the Liberty, looked like easy prey. But appearances could be deceiving. "Tom, are you ready?" Jake asked over the comm. "Ready, Captain," Tom Bradley replied from the engineering section. "All cargo containers primed for release." The plasma beams struck the human ships, but instead of destroying them, the beams passed. Through what looked like solid hulls, the aliens were firing at holograms and decoy projections. "Now!" Jake ordered. The real human ships, hidden behind sensor jammers and false signatures, suddenly revealed themselves. What the aliens had thought were cargo containers opened like flowers, revealing missile launchers, fusion warheads launched by the dozens. These weren't the small fission bombs the humans had showed the aliens months ago. These were much more powerful weapons, disguised as obsolete technology. The missiles struck Zephyrian shields and exploded with miniature suns. The alien energy barriers held for a moment, then collapsed under the massive energy release. "Impossible," Vextal whispered as he watched two of his cruisers disappear in nuclear fire. But the surprises weren't over. Amy Wells was coordinating the next phase from her command post on Earth. "All kinetic kill vehicles, activate now," she ordered. Across the solar system, objects that had looked like space junk for months suddenly came to life. The kinetic kill vehicles were simple weapons, just dense metal rods with basic guidance systems. But they had been positioned perfectly throughout the solar system, waiting for this moment. Using gravitational assists from planets and moons, the kill vehicles began building speed. They fell toward the alien fleet like invisible arrows, too small and fast for most sensors to detect. Lisa Park watched from her orbital platform as the plan unfolded. "Phase 3, execute," she ordered. The orbital defense platforms around Earth opened fire, but not at the alien ships. Instead, they fired at specific points in space where the aliens would be in several minutes. Vextal was beginning to understand that he had underestimated these humans. Their weapons were old, but their tactics were completely unpredictable. "Sir, multiple contacts approaching from all directions," his sensor operator reported with growing panic. "How many?" "I count over 200 objects, all on collision course." The kinetic kill vehicles arrived like a storm of metal death. They struck alien ships at fantastic speeds, punching through hulls and shields alike. The Zephyrians advanced. Technology meant nothing against simple physics. "Return fire," Vextal ordered desperately. The alien fleet tried to fight back, but they were confused and scattered. They had expected an organized battle with clear front lines. Instead, they faced attacks coming from every direction at once. Captain Jake Morrison pressed his advantage. "All ships, pattern 7. Tom, prepare the special surprise." "Aye, Captain," Tom replied. He had been saving his best idea for this moment. The cargo ship suddenly vented its entire atmosphere in a controlled explosion. To the aliens, it looked like the ship was dying, but it was actually a trick. The vented gas contained metallic particles that interfered with Zephyrian sensors. In the confusion, Tom activated his secret weapon, the ship's antimatter fuel supply, rigged to create a directed explosion. The blast sent a stream of superheated plasma and debris directly at the nearest alien cruiser. The Zephyrian shields, already weakened by nuclear attacks, couldn't handle the chaotic, multi-spectrum assault. Dr. Sam Johnson had been right. The aliens fought like it was a video game, expecting organized and predictable enemies. They had no experience with human-style warfare, where everything was a weapon and nothing was off-limits. Frank Miller's asteroid launchers kept firing, turning space rocks into bullets. Amy Wells's kill vehicles struck from impossible angles. Lisa Park's orbital platforms created deadly crossfires at precisely calculated points. But it was the human crews that made the difference. When their missiles ran out, they used their ships as battering rams. When their power failed, they rigged emergency systems to explode. When their weapons broke, they improvised new ones from spare parts. Vextal watched his proud fleet being torn apart by an enemy he had dismissed as primitive. "How are they doing this?" he demanded. His tactical officer was studying the human attack patterns. "Sir, they're not following any standard military doctrine. They're using everything as a weapon. Their ships, their cargo, even their own destruction. What kind of species fights like this?" "A desperate one, sir," the officer replied quietly. The battle raged for hours. The Zephyrian ships were individually superior, but they were fighting an enemy that refused to follow the rules. Human ships attacked in swarms, sacrificing themselves to damage alien vessels. Mining equipment became artillery. Cargo containers became bombs. 6 months passed like a bad dream. Every day, humans looked up at the sky and wondered when the aliens would return. The answer came on a cold Tuesday morning when 50 alien ships appeared near Jupiter. President Karen Stone sat in the White House Situation Room, surrounded by her top advisors. The room was full of tension and fear. On the big screen, they could see the alien fleet through telescope images. The ships looked like silver drops of water floating in space. "How many ships?" President Stone asked. Her voice was calm, but her hands were shaking slightly. General Pete Collins, a tough old soldier with gray hair, checked his reports. 50 confirmed, Madam President, each one bigger than our largest battleship." Admiral Susan Wright leaned forward. She was the head of Space Command and had spent her whole life preparing for space battles. But not like this. "They're staying outside the asteroid belt, just out of range of our weapons." "Or so they think," General Collins muttered. "President." Stone looked at the screen again. "Have they made contact yet?" Amy Wells, who had been promoted to head of Alien Communications, nodded. "Yes, Madam President. Ambassador Krill Knox wants to speak with you directly. Put him through." The screen changed to show the familiar face of the alien ambassador. His silver eyes seemed colder than before. "President Stone of Earth," Krill Knox said without greeting. "You have had time to consider our offer. What is your answer?" President Stone sat up straight. "We need more time to discuss this with all nations of Earth." The alien made that sound that might have been laughter. "Time is finished. You will surrender your planet to Zephyrian rule within 72 of your hours. If you refuse, we will take it by force." "And if we agree?" President Stone asked. "Then your people will become workers in our empire. You will be fed and housed. Your warriors will serve in our armies. Your scientists will work for our benefit." "Slaves," General Collins said quietly. Krill Knox heard him. "Not slaves, servants. There is a difference." President Stone felt anger burning in her chest. "What if we fight?" "With your antique weapons." The alien seemed amused. "Your metal bullets, cannot pierce our shields. Your chemical rockets cannot catch our ships. You will lose quickly, and many of your people will die unnecessarily." The transmission ended. The room was quiet for a long moment. "Options?" President Stone asked. "Admiral," Wright spoke first, "in a straight fight, we lose. Their technology is too advanced." "So we don't fight straight," said a new voice. Everyone turned to look at Dr. Sam Johnson. He was a military historian, brought in to study how humans had won wars against impossible odds throughout history. "Explain," President Stone said. "Doctor." Johnson stood up and walked to a wall screen. "Every great victory in human history came from fighting differently than the enemy expected. The aliens expect us to line up our ships and shoot at each other like gentlemen. But humans don't fight like gentlemen when our survival is at stake." "What do you mean?" Admiral Wright asked. "I mean, we use every dirty trick we know," Dr. Johnson said. "We use the environment. We use deception. We make every rock and piece of metal in this solar system into a weapon." General Collins smiled grimly. "Asymmetric warfare." "Exactly," Dr. Johnson said. "They have better guns, but we know this solar system like they know their own homes. We use that advantage." President Stone looked around the room. "What do you need?" Colonel Mary Davis, the Pentagon's best strategic planner, spoke up. "Everything. Madam President, every ship, every weapon, every person who can hold a wrench or push a button." "You have it," President Stone said without hesitation. "The next 72 hours changed humanity forever. The plan they called Operation Sledgehammer began immediately. Captain Jake Morrison found himself in command of a small fleet of cargo ships. They didn't look like much, just big metal boxes with engines attached. But Tom Bradley and his team of engineers were working day and night to change that. "How's it going, Tom?" Jake asked as he walked through the cargo bay of his ship. Tom looked up from a complicated piece of machinery. His hands were dirty and his clothes were torn, but his eyes were bright with excitement. "Good, Captain. Real good," Tom said. "We're installing missile launchers inside fake cargo containers. The aliens will think we're just carrying supplies." Jake looked at the missiles. They were bigger than the ones he had shown the aliens months ago. "Are those nuclear?" Tom grinned. "Fusion warheads, Captain. Much bigger boom than the fission bombs we showed them." "Will they work against alien shields?" "That depends on how close we can get," Tom admitted. "But I have some ideas about that, too." Across the solar system, other preparations were happening. Lisa Park was working with orbital defense platforms around Earth. But these weren't normal. Weapons platforms. "It's all about timing," Lisa explained to her team. "The aliens expect us to shoot at them directly. Instead, we're going to shoot where they're going to be." Her assistant, a young officer named Rick Stone, looked confused. "But how do we know where they'll be?" Lisa smiled. "Because we're going to make them go where we want them to go." Near the asteroid belt, another part of the plan was taking shape. Engineer Frank Miller had been working there for months, supposedly mining asteroids for valuable metals. But that wasn't what he was really doing. "Mass drivers online," Frank reported to Admiral Wright. "We can launch rocks at significant fractions of light speed." "How significant?" Admiral Wright asked. "Fast enough to punch through most known shield types," Frank said. "The aliens designed their shields to stop energy weapons. Solid matter traveling at extreme speed is a different problem." Amy Wells was handling a different part of the plan. She was in charge of communication networks, but she was also doing something else. "How many kinetic kill vehicles do we have in place?" she asked her team. 237, came the answer. all disguised as space junk or dead satellites. The kinetic kill vehicles were simple but deadly, just dense metal rods with basic guidance systems. To alien sensors, they looked like debris, but when activated, they could use gravity from planets and moons to build tremendous speed. Dr. Sam Johnson was studying alien tactics. He had recordings of their ship movements and communication patterns. They fight like a video game, he told President Stone during a briefing. Very organized, very predictable. They expect their enemies to fight the same way. What does that mean for us? President Stone asked. It means they won't be ready for chaos, Dr. Johnson said. Human warfare is messy and unpredictable. We don't follow rules when our lives are at stake. As the deadline approached, Captain Jake Morrison gathered with other ship commanders. They knew most of them would not survive the coming battle. Remember, Jake told them, we're not trying to win a fair fight. We're trying to win, period. Use everything you have, every piece of metal, every drop of fuel, every trick you can think of. Colonel Mary Davis gave the final briefing to all forces. The aliens think this will be easy because our weapons are old. They're about to learn that old doesn't mean useless. President Stone made one last broadcast to Earth and all human colonies. My fellow humans, she said, we face an enemy that thinks we are weak. They see our rifles and call them antiques. They see our ships and call them slow. But they don't see what makes us human. She paused and looked directly at the camera. They don't see our courage. They don't see our determination. They don't see that we will never surrender our freedom. In a few hours, they will attack us with weapons we cannot match. But we will fight them with something they don't have. We will fight them with the knowledge that this is our home, and we will defend it with our lives. The transmission ended. Across the solar system, humans waited at their posts. Miners became soldiers. Cargo ships became warships. Space junk became weapons. Captain Jake Morrison stood on his bridge, looking out at the stars. Amy Wells sat at her station, ready to coordinate the complex attack patterns. Lisa Park checked her weapons one last time. Tom Bradley made final adjustments to the hidden missile launchers. Captain, Amy said quietly, alien ships are moving. They're coming toward Earth. Jake nodded. All stations, this is Captain Morrison. Operation Sledgehammer is now active. Remember, we're not just fighting for ourselves. We're fighting for every human who will ever be born. He looked around at his crew. They were scared but ready. In their eyes, he saw the same fire that had carried humans from caves to the stars. Let's show these aliens what humans do when someone threatens our family, Jake said. The battle for humanity was about to begin. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship, the Liberty. He looked out at the stars through the big front window. His hands were steady, but his heart was beating fast. Today was the day humans would meet aliens for the first time. Captain, we're getting a signal, said Amy Wells from her seat at the communications desk. She was young but smart, and Jake trusted her completely. It's coming from the alien ship. Jake nodded. Put it on the main screen. The screen flickered and showed something amazing. The alien ship was huge, maybe 10 times bigger than the Liberty. It was smooth and silver with blue lights running along its sides. It looked like nothing humans had ever built. Sir, they're asking permission to dock at Harmony Point, Amy said. Her voice was excited but nervous. Harmony Point was a space station that humans had built just for this meeting. It sat between Earth and Mars in neutral space. Both sides had agreed to meet there. Tell them yes, Jake said. And Amy, make sure. Our translator computers are working perfectly. Lisa Park, the ship's tactical officer, turned from her station. She was tough and always ready for trouble. "Captain, should I keep our weapons ready?" Jake thought for a moment. "No, Lisa. Keep them off. We want to show we come in peace." The alien ship moved toward Harmony Point like it was floating on air. It made no sound and left no trail behind it. Human ships were loud and messy compared to this beautiful machine. Tom Bradley, the ship's engineer, whistled softly. "Look at that thing move, Captain. No rockets, no fire coming out the back. How do they do it?" "I guess we'll find out," Jake said. That 2 hours later, Jake found himself walking through the halls of Harmony Point. The space station was new and clean, built specially for this historic day. Other important humans were there, too. Senator Bill Hayes was the main negotiator for Earth. He was an older man with gray hair and kind eyes. "Nervous, Captain?" Senator Hayes asked as they walked toward the meeting room. "A little," Jake admitted. "This changes everything for humanity." "Yes, it does," the senator agreed. "Let's hope it changes things for the better." They entered a large room with a round table in the center. On one side sat the humans. On the other side were 3 aliens. The aliens were tall and thin, maybe 7 feet high. Their skin was pale blue and their eyes were large and silver. They wore clothes that seemed to be made of light itself, changing colors as they moved. The leader of the aliens stood up. When he spoke, the translator made his words sound clear and formal. "I am Ambassador Krillnox of the Zephyrian Empire," he said. "We greet the humans of Earth." Senator Hayes stood and smiled. "Welcome, Ambassador. I am Senator Bill Hayes, speaking for all of humanity. We are honored to meet you." The meeting went on for hours. The aliens explained that they controlled many star systems and had many different species working for them. They had faster-than-light travel and weapons that humans couldn't even imagine. "We have been watching your species for some time," Ambassador Krillnox said. "You show promise, but you are still very young as a space-traveling people." "We'd like to learn from you," Senator Hayes said carefully. The ambassador made a sound that might have been laughter. "Of course. That is why we are here, to see if you are ready to join our empire." The word empire made Jake uncomfortable, but he stayed quiet. This was not his job. After the formal meeting, the aliens asked to see human technology. Senator Hayes agreed, thinking it would help build trust. The next day, Jake found himself giving a tour of human military equipment. The aliens followed him around like curious children, but Jake noticed they seemed more amused than impressed. "This is our main battle rifle," Jake said, holding up the weapon. "It fires metal bullets at high speed." One of the aliens, a female, named Zexara, touched the rifle gently. "Metal projectiles," she said. "How traditional." Jake showed them a missile. "This one can destroy a whole building." "Chemical explosives," another alien noted. "We used similar weapons thousands of years ago." They looked at the nuclear warheads next. The aliens seemed slightly more interested. "Atomic fission, Ambassador," Krillnox said. "A good first step toward real power." Jake felt his pride shrinking. Everything humans thought was advanced seemed like old junk to these aliens. The tour continued. Jake showed them human spaceships, computers, and communication systems. Each time, the aliens politely nodded but looked bored. That evening, Jake sat in his quarters feeling frustrated. Amy Wells knocked on his door. "Come in," he called. Amy entered, looking troubled. "Captain, I've been listening to the alien communications. They don't know I can understand some of their language." "What are they saying?" Jake asked. Amy sat down. They're laughing at us, sir. They think our weapons are antiques. They call us primitive and harmless. Jake felt anger rise in his chest. What else? They're planning to make Earth part of their empire whether we agree or not, Amy said, quietly. They think we can't stop them. Jake stared out his small window at the stars. Maybe they're right, Amy. Their ships are faster, their weapons are stronger. But, Captain, Amy said, they don't understand humans very well, do they? Jake looked at her. What do you mean? They think having better guns makes them better fighters, Amy explained. But humans have been fighting wars for thousands of years. We know it's not just about the weapons. Jake slowly smiled. You're right, Amy. They see our rifles and think we're weak. But they don't see what's behind the rifles. What's that, sir? The minds that know how to use them, Jake said. The next morning brought bad news. The aliens were leaving, but not in a friendly way. We have made our decision, Ambassador Krill Knox announced to the gathered humans. Earth will become part of the Zephyrian Empire. You have one of your months to prepare for integration. Senator Hayes stood up quickly. Wait, Ambassador, we haven't agreed to anything yet. Agreement is not required, the alien said coldly. We have seen your military capabilities. You cannot resist us. And if we refuse? Senator Hayes asked. The ambassador's silver eyes went dark. Then we will use force. Your weapons are antiques. Your ships are slow. You will surrender or be conquered. With that, the aliens left Harmony Point and disappeared into space. Jake stood with the other humans, watching the alien ship fade into the distance. Well, Senator Hayes said quietly, I guess we know where we stand. Yes, Jake agreed. They think we're helpless. Tom Bradley joined them. Captain, what do we do now? Jake looked around at his crew and the other humans. They were scared, but not broken. In their eyes, he saw something the aliens had missed. He saw the fire that had carried humanity from caves to the stars. Now we show them what humans do when someone threatens our home, Jake said. We fight. Lisa Park smiled grimly. With antique weapons? With whatever we have, Jake replied. And with something they don't have. What's that? Amy asked. Jake looked back at the stars where the alien ship had gone. The will to win, no matter the cost. As the Liberty turned toward Earth, Jake began making plans. The aliens thought human weapons were old and useless. Soon they would learn that in the right hands any weapon could be deadly.